What up, YouTube? It's your boy Javon, and I'm coming back at you with another edition of Context Matters. So this morning, I was in a bit of a reflective mode when I was driving back to the house from the gym after a good workout. It kind of put me in a pretty good mind state, and I was just thinking as I was listening to one of the songs that I frequently listen to when I'm in a pretty somber or surreal kind of moment. And so, what I was thinking about was individuals that talk about the power of prayer, right? I myself am a Taoist. And for those of you who don't know what it is or are not familiar with it, Google it, do a little quick research. I'll maybe double back on it another time and maybe touch bases on how it applies to my life. But nonetheless, it's one of those things that helps to shape my identity and how I see the world, through my own lens and what have you. And so I meet a lot of people and I've spoken with a lot of people. I've grown up around people in the church. I myself attended church growing up and have always heard people talking about the power of prayer and how all you have to do is be diligent and to believe in the Lord, believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and pray for things that you would like to see come to fruition, and they will in fact produce themselves. God will bless you. All you have to do is open your mouth and ask. And I've always struggled with the validity of prayer. I'm sure lots of people have. Hell, theologians for hundreds of years have, debated back and forth about the context of prayer and what have you. But I've always had this little thing in the back of my mind when I hear someone asking for me to pray for them, or someone that says, hey, you know what, if you're experiencing hard times, or, you're in a very, very reflective mode, or even if you're in a happy, thankful mode, always send prayers and thanks to God and whatnot. And so as I was driving home and I was thinking about why it is that I don't feel that prayer is applicable to my life, is, it just stems back to my childhood. For those of you that have been tuning in and kind of seeing as I'm working and moving through these thought processes and issues that, I was challenged with as a child, I think that my attitude toward prayers directly correlates and is tied to the breakdown between my mother and I when I was a child. And so, like other little black boys in the hood, I grew up without a father, and 4 out of 5 kids that I came across were in the same exact boat. And so that was something that there was a common ground with and a common bond with. But not too many people that I grew up with or around grew up without a mother in their life. And what I mean by in their life is being raised by your mother, establishing, having some sort of, deep connection, and having a reverence for your mother, and just having a real connection to the person that actually birthed you and brought you into this world. As some of you know, by the time I was 10 years old, I was out of my mother's custody, and she was really battling drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sex addiction, all those things. And so when I was 10 years old, into the time I was maybe 19 years old, there was a real struggle that I had, especially with talking with people that were in the church, because they'd always tell me to just get down on my knees and pray and just ask the Lord for what it is that I need, and that the Lord would provide me with everything that I needed. May not give me what I want, but would definitely provide me with what I need. And as I tried to struggle to make my way through my adolescence and teenage years, like any other kid, I would, wish for a bunch of physical things, Nintendo, clothes, shoes, what have you. But when I did bend the knee and did look up to the Lord, or bow the head and put my hands together, the thing that I always asked God for was for my mother to get clean and to come back and to get me, right? And so my story is no different than millions of other kids in the hood, and it's not different than any of the cousins that I had in my family tree. We all were victims of circumstance, and that crack cocaine really hit our family hard. And all of my uncles and most of my aunts battled with and struggled with being addicted to crack cocaine, alcohol, any other type of hard vices that tend to kind of prohibit you from having a good, meaningful life. But the one thing that made my circumstances unique is that, my mother, whether she was in the current city I was living in or was hundreds of miles away, the bottom line is that she was absent. And when I looked at my cousins, as I often did, and seeing their situations, one of the things that I used to really be annoyed about, and I used to really, really be angry with my mother about, is that I knew my aunts were on drugs, and I knew that my aunts did drugs with my mother, and all of my extended aunts, my mother's friends, who, looked at me as their nephew, and I call them aunt even to this day. They indulged in drinking and drugging and a destructive life together, but those women always had their kids with them. And as I started getting older, 14, 15, 16 years old, it really started to bother me that I had to stay with my grandmother and that I wouldn't hear from my mother for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 8 months in a row. And most of the time we lived in the same city. It really, really ate at me. And so when I was in a space of desperation, I would literally just cry out to God and ask for him to inspire my mother to get herself clean and to come back and get me, right? Because that was also a sticking point between me and a lot of my family members, is that, my grandmother's walls were thin, and I would have to listen to conversations that my grandmother would have with her other sons and daughters that would always ask her, why am I with her? Why did she take me in and, not necessarily take them or their kids in? And as a kid, hearing that people in your family resent you for things that are outside of your control was very, very hard to deal with. But in the household I lived in, you didn't talk about your feelings, right? They weren't validated. They weren't real, even if you brought them to the table. And so I grew up just really, really wishing that God would bless me with what I wanted. Anything that came beyond that meant nothing to me. All I wanted was to have my mother, right? And to have that connection. It's very, very taxing and very, very troubling to be an 11, 12-year-old kid and to be hyper aware that you have this hole inside of your body and you have this pain and you have these emotions inside of your body that you couldn't really express to other people because either they're too busy dealing with the shit going on in their life, or they try to dismiss them away as that's just the way things are, and to stay faithful and to stay prayed up and everything will work itself out. Well, for me, it didn't work out. My mother and I never reached any kind of amicable terms or had a good relationship when I was a teenager. And by the time I left and went to the military and started my life, there were times where I would come back and try to intervene in her life and try to implore her to get herself together. I would offer for her to pay for her to go into rehab. And there was always excuses as to why it couldn't happen. And so that's one thing that really, really annoyed me about this concept of prayer, is that if the argument is that you have to have pure intent and you have to really, really want something, and it has to be something that is going to help you and complete you, not something superficial, like asking to be loved by your biological parents to the degree in which they can be for you what you need them to be. It shouldn't be something that is conditional. Like I've heard people in the church say, oh, well, you have to live an upright life and you got to be doing this and this and that. That's an unfair thing to burden a teenage or an adolescent youth with when we're not mature enough or don't really have enough miles clocked on this earth to understand that you got to do certain things in order to have your prayers answered, especially when I'm seeing people around me that, in my opinion, are doing way worse, having the things that they want and praising God and speaking truth to power and talking about how God is doing all these great things in their life. That really, really burnt me out, right? But it doesn't stop there. So as an adult, I began my journey to carve out my own niche and to create my own life. And I would periodically try to go back and reconnect with my mother, but she was never really, really willing to do it under my terms. And my terms were quite simple. It wasn't as if I was asking her for something that was completely selfish. All I wanted her to do was to get herself clean and to take a leap of faith on coming and leaving the environment she's in and starting a new life with me if need be. By the time I got married and had my first kid, I wanted her to be able to make amends for my childhood. We had extensive conversations, to which I told her there's no way we could salvage a mother and son relationship, because there's just too many times that you subjected me to things that my heart just couldn't take, right? Too many promises that went unfulfilled, too many nights waiting for her to come or to do things that she said she would do for me, and coming up short. Too many times that she looked me in the face and told me she was going to get herself clean. And too many times where she also looked me in the face and told me no matter what I wanted or no matter how I felt about it, she was going to live her life the way she wanted to live her life. And in essence, I didn't mean enough to her for her to change her life. Her and I had these real, honest conversations, and it became clear to me that she just couldn't step up to the plate as being a mother for me. And I get that. I made my peace with that. We talked about it. Knowledge of self is important. Once I realized all the things that were burdened upon her and how she had to deal with her circumstances, it made total sense why she couldn't be there for me. But when I became an adult and got married and had children, I told her flat out, this is your chance, to make a difference. I don't need you to be a mother for me, but I'm asking for you to be a grandmother to your grandchildren. And so the conditions of that were always the same. All you have to do is come out of that hellacious environment that you're in. Leave those people alone who have helped you to find yourself in this low place and even are complicit in keeping you there, But she would never take me up on the offer. And that at face value means nothing. But the thing that bothered me the most is that she chose to live a double life, and she would tell our other family members that I'm keeping her from her grandchildren, without explaining and giving context and owning up to the fact that she just didn't want to live up to the conditions and the terms that I set forth. So I'm starting to have these battles with these people in my family that I really don't give a fuck about in the first place, right? I mean, we're blood relatives, but a lot of them help to tear away and to, bring pain and hardship to me in my life. And so once I got old enough to realize that I didn't owe them something that they didn't earn, really didn't matter to me about their opinion, but it still bothered me that I have to field these calls, or I have these people talking about how bad I am because now I'm living this great life and I've left the city I was, raised in. And I turned my back on everybody, and I think I'm too good, not really understanding that I have to turn my back on disloyalty. I have to turn my back on disaster. I have to turn my back on these individuals that treated each other the worst. Like, they're the thickest thieves, drink together, smoke together, do Lord knows what together. And I seen how they treat each other in the worst way. So why do I want to be amongst those who treat people that you're supposed to love the worst? But I have to field these calls and hear these conversations on the backside about these people have all these opinions about me and my relationship with my mom, saying I'm just the worst person because I could have been on helped her. I didn't see it fit to call them on every occasion and try to clarify, because I don't owe them that. But I would be lying if I said it didn't bother me. And so I would speak to her about that. And her excuse is that she didn't want anybody in her business. She's ashamed. And so she just says things so that people would just leave the conversation alone. But I try to explain to her, but you're painting me out to be this person that I'm not. Like, I'm not the hindrance between us having a relationship. I'm not the hindrance between you having a relationship with your grandkids. Like, your actions, your decisions are. And so even in those times where I was willing to come back to the drawing board and willing to sit in silence and just talk to God, have conversations with God, I would ask God to give her the strength and the courage and the wherewithal to get herself together to be a grandmother for my children. I just can't understand how I look at my daughter, especially when she was very young. And I looked at my daughter, and my daughter looks like me, and I look like my mom. I just couldn't understand how my mother could turn her back on me. Like, when you look at me, you see yourself. When I see my daughter, especially, I see myself. There's no way that I would do to my children or allow what happened to me to happen to my children. And so I struggled with that. But on bended knee, Hail Marys, praises to the sky, just asking God to please help and intervene in this situation. Please help to make whole a man now, a whole grown ass man. Help to make whole a grown man who has half of his soul missing. It's very uncomfortable having knowledge of self, knowing that the way in which I view women, the way in which I treated women, my perspective and how I'm able to withdraw from love stems directly from the fact that not having that connection and not having that love from my mother. That's a void that no one else on this planet can ever fill. No matter who I met in my life, no matter how many wonderful people come into my life that could help bring some joy, there's no one that can ever compare with the love between a mother and their son or their daughter. I mean, again, they're the vessel. They carry us. They bring us into this world. There's a connection there, or it seems there's a connection there that is higher than any other connection possible to experience. And so just knowing that I'm devoid of that, but having to deal with my family members talking all this shit behind my back, thinking that I'm leaving her out to dry and that I'm trying to intentionally punish her by not letting her see her grandchildren, and then talking with her and hearing her say all the truths that I wish that she would just say to everybody else, so they just shut the fuck up and leave us alone. You know, she would choose to be honest with me because she can't lie to me. I know the truth. I am the truth. I am in the truth. The truth is in me. And having to balance that out with also having these two young children growing up and starting to wonder where is their grandmother at, right? One of the saddest parts about this thing is that my mother had the opportunity to spend time with my son for a period of about 3 weeks or so, back when he was like 10 months. Aside from that, she's never laid eyes on him again, never spoke to him. My daughter was 13 years old when my mom passed, and my daughter never even heard my mother's voice, never even had an interaction whatsoever, right? And my wife and I were honest with our kids and told them, hey, you know what, there's certain people that we're not going to allow into our life, into our circle, because we don't trust that they're going to be able to value you and protect you in a way that we are. And so just knowing that she wouldn't step up to the plate to be a grandmother, on top of not wanting to step up to the plate to be a mother, and trying everything that I could, so far as I can see it, through prayer and through opening my heart up, being able to forgive, being willing to forget about these things that now they're solid, they're galvanized in who I am as a person. I can't shake my childhood. I can't forget about the things that adversely affected me. Now I just find ways to use them in a more productive way, right? I use them to motivate myself to become better, and that's all I can do. But to say that all you have to do is pray and God is going to answer your prayers, or God is only going to give you what you can handle, or that, you know, not everything that I wanted in life was necessary for me. Those things, they bounce off me. Like, I reject them wholeheartedly, whether I smile in your face and I'm respectful and I just say, okay, I hear you, or whether we have a real solid conversation, I tell you how I really feel about the situation. The bottom line is that the one thing that I wanted in this life, the one thing that would have made me whole, never happened, right? And now she's gone, she's passed away, and there's really nothing except for closure. You know, I remember telling her years ago, and I've told other people and they flip out about it, you know, which I don't care about, but they flip out when I say, you know what, I've been waiting my whole life. Since 10 years old, I've been preparing myself to get a phone call saying that my mother died or that my mother was killed, because I understood the lifestyle that she was in. I understood the risks that she was taking. And so I had to prepare myself mentally for that. But I also knew that my life would be able to begin anew, and that I would be able to close a chapter of a book, right, that had been plaguing me once she died. And to be honest, it came the same way that I felt like it would when my aunt TM called me and told me that my mother had passed. It literally was like a huge burden had been lifted off me. I mean, I literally felt it. I felt the burden leave my spirit, because the one thing that I knew is that there would never be another opportunity for her to do something, or to not do something that would hurt me again, right? Anything that I experienced that I internalized as hurt is all past stuff, and I can deal with the past things. I'm a historian. I love diving through the past, but there wouldn't be anything else that she could ever bring to the table that could shake me to my core, right? So there's some finality in that, right? And so to bring it all back full circle, right? I'm sure that other individuals have their own take on, the power of prayer, and probably has some good words of encouragement to say, or, want to implore me to kind of take a different stance and to look at something from a different perspective. But all I know is that at face value, just telling somebody to pray on something and they'll get it, or saying stuff like, God only allows, not allows, God only, what's that saying? God only burdens you with what you can handle. I'm not too sure about that, right? Sure, I'm still here. I'm living a meaningful life. I'm trying to constantly refine myself and become a better version of myself. I try to put all these principles into practice that, help me to become a better person and to stand out amongst my peers, right? I'm trying to contribute to humanity and to the people around me. But at the end of the day, there's still this hole inside of me, right? There's still these demons, as I call them, that visit me, right? And so those will never, ever go away. And so they can't be prayed away. And the only thing that I can do at this point is to continue to look forward, right? And so that's my take on the matter. And that was what was swirling around in my head this morning as I made it back, So now I'm shaved, showered, ready to hit this day, ready to go and give the people who I care about the best parts of me. Thank you for listening to me. Until the next episode. Peace.